It was Valentine's Day, and my boyfriend decided to make me a home-cooked meal at his place. He lived alone in an apartment. When I went over, he had the dining room all decorated for Valentine's Day. There was rose petals on the floor, a bottle of champagne and a bucket of ice, and there were scented candles lit. He was always the romantic type, and I thought it was a very nice gesture of him to do. After dinner, my boyfriend said that he wanted to do a Valentine's Day shot. This struck me as odd. My boyfriend was a recovering alcoholic and had not had a drop in over a year. I pointed this out to him. I did not want to reopen that dark door in his past life again. But he insisted and held the shot glass in front of my nose. I locked eyes with him, and something was not right. The whole night had been normal, but in this moment, something was off. I knew I should not have, but I took the shot. It was only when I realized he had not taken his shot that something was very wrong. Everything went black. I woke up in his bedroom, my hands tied very tightly together with a rope. I looked around nervously, trying to gather my thoughts. My boyfriend was sitting on the edge of the bed. He got up and walked over to me when he heard me wake up. I told him to untie me, and that if this is some kind of kinky sex fantasy he had, I wanted nothing to do with it. He practically roofied me. My boyfriend laughed, and he said that this was not a sex kink. I told him to untie me immediately. This is so messed up. My boyfriend just laughed and said he knows. Knows what? I asked. He said he knows that I'm cheating on him. I looked him in the eyes. He seemed deranged. He seemed not himself. At this point, I was terrified for my life. In my heart of hearts, I was not cheating on him, and I said that to him. I told him that I would never do such a thing. My boyfriend only shook his head. He said that he knows I'm lying. He said he'll give me one more chance to admit that I cheated, or else he's going to slice me open. That's when he pulled out a very large carving knife. I started to bawl my eyes out. I pleaded with him and told him that's not the kind of person that I am. But as I pleaded with him, his eyes never once looked normal. He seemed to be in some kind of drugged up, jealous rage. Nothing I was saying was sticking with him. He shook his head and said I'm a liar and a cheater. He held the knife up and lunged at me. I did the only thing that I could think of and kicked my foot out. My foot landed right on his crotch. I even heard a crunch. I kicked him again in the nuts, and he fell to the floor, screaming in agony. I jumped up, my hand still tied with rope, and stomped on his face. I heard bones breaking and knew this was my chance to run. I sprinted down the stairs and out his front door. I ran to his next-door neighbor's house, banged on their door, and begged them to help and call the police. They ushered me in the house and called the police. They arrived very fast, 3 squad cars, and I saw them drag my boyfriend out of his house in handcuffs. That was last year. My boyfriend, or rather, ex-boyfriend, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Not enough time, if you ask me. It was the worst Valentine's Day that I ever experienced. I work at a local hair salon as a hairstylist. I'm in my 20s, and to put it blunt, I get hit on all the time by guys who come into the salon. I'm used to it at this point. It was Valentine's Day, and this guy Mark comes in. Mark comes in a lot, but he is one of those awkwardly creepy guys who does not understand social cues or boundaries. He of course asked for me as always, and I gave him his usual haircut. When I finished him, he turned and handed me a note. I did not want to be rude, so I opened it in front of him and read it. The note said, "I love you and have always loved you. Will you be my Valentine?" I had to politely tell him no, that I have a boyfriend and am very happy with him. When I said this, Mark started to become visibly upset. He started to shake and his face grew red. I took a step back, nervous that he was going to punch me or something. He snatched the note out of my hands and stormed out of the salon. Everyone who was working and getting their hair done stared at me and asked if I was okay. I was. Again, I was used to getting hit on, maybe not to this crazy extent, but still, I was used to it. The rest of my shift went by as usual. I was closing that night and locked the doors at 9 p.m. sharp. I waited at the salon front desk when my boyfriend texted me that he was out front and here to pick me up. I unlocked the door, stepped outside, and then relocked it. I saw my boyfriend sitting in his car near the back of the parking lot. I started walking over to him when I was suddenly tackled from behind. I fell to the ground hard, and someone was on top of me. They spun me around and put their hands on my throat, shaking me and trying to choke me. It was Mark. His eyes were bloodshot. I could smell alcohol on him. He was screaming at me saying, "Why will I not be his Valentine? Why won't I love him?" I was trying to fight back, but he was too strong. I was gasping for any breath that I could get. Suddenly, Mark flew off of me. My boyfriend had sprinted from his car and tackled Mark. My boyfriend started pummeling his face in the parking lot. I got up, taking deep breaths, and went over to help my boyfriend. That's when Mark punched my boyfriend in the jaw and then sprinted away. My boyfriend tried to chase after him, but I told him not to. He might have a weapon. My boyfriend nodded and asked if I was okay. I was okay, but definitely shaken up. We ended up making a report with the police, and both me and my boyfriend went to the hospital to make sure that everything was alright. It was, but the police never caught Mark. The only information he gave us when we gave him a haircut was his first name and a cell phone number. When the police tried to call the number, they got a dead line. I never saw Mark again. It was Valentine's Day, and my friend Michelle and I were both walking home from school. We were both single and did not really care about the holiday. We saw it as more of a money grab than actual love. Anyway, we were walking along the sidewalk when a few houses ahead, I saw a man wearing an all-white mask. He was standing behind some tall bushes. This was strange, and I told Michelle to look at that man. When she looked up, the man in the white mask was no longer there. She said that I must be seeing things, but I swear that I did see someone. Soon after, I said goodbye to Michelle as we reached her house, and then I walked to mine. Later that night, I was lying in my bed, just scrolling through social media, when I got a text message. It was from an unknown number, but a local area code. The text said, "Will you be my Valentine?" This kind of made me chuckle. I figured maybe it was Michelle or someone else texting me from a fake number, trying to mess with me. I texted back, "Who is this?" Moments later, the person texted back. It said the same thing. "Will you be my Valentine?" I just was not amused anymore, then texted back, "No." A few seconds after sending the message, there was suddenly a loud banging on my front door downstairs. This freaked me out, and I was suddenly remembering that man in the white mask that I saw earlier. I heard my dad start going down the stairs to answer the door. I followed behind him, warning him that it could be someone bad. He slowly opened the front door and shrieked back in horror. From where I was standing, I could not see anything, but my father pulled the front door all the way open. My mouth dropped in horror. Our front door was covered in what I hope was only red paint. But even worse, my high school photo was hanging on the door, stabbed with a gigantic knife. I took the picture down from the door, my nerves rattling, and I noticed that my eyes were cut out. I turned the photo over, and on the back, written in red, was, "You shouldn't have said no to being my Valentine." We never found out who did this.